Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Tom Miller, and this is our third week of our Monday mentorship series. And I hope you are enjoying these lessons. It's been a lot of fun to put them together for you, thinking about you. If you haven't heard the first two, you can go back on our podcast and listen to the last two episodes. So, this session in particular is really focused on driving accountability and building culture that performs. Okay, so moving from expectations to execution. And so, over the past 2 weeks, we've talked about one, thinking differently, and two, creating stability through clarity and consistency. And so, but here's the reality. I mean, none of that honestly matters if you don't um, translate those thoughts into action. Okay. And clarity creates direction. Stability creates confidence. And but accountability creates results. Okay. Accountability creates the results. So today I want to talk to you about accountability, but maybe not in a way that you've been thinking about it before. So let's kind of just look at, some of the problems that many of us have, faced, right? So this is something you might be thinking about currently in your school, or maybe have dealt with in the past. So let me frame it this way. Most schools do not have an accountability problem. They have a belief problem. Now, that means that leaders set expectations, leaders communicate clearly, leaders follow up, but behavior still doesn't stick. So you can't hold people accountable to a standard that they do not believe in. And this is where most leadership breaks down. So if you're leading a school right now, or if you're leading a team right now, or a classroom right now, an organization right now, you're not just dealing with culture, right? There's pressure from your board, right? So at the time of this recording, it's the first week of April. So there might be board pressures and communication challenges. You might be dealing with massive financial, challenges, which lots of organizations are. Enrollment and retention concerns, retention for your students and retention for your staff morale, burnout, wondering if they're coming back next year, you know, maybe it's uh, special education, enrollment, compliance, legal exposure, massive risks, policy and compliance landmines, new laws from legislation getting passed like all the time, and us trying to figure out how to fund that mandate, how to implement that mandate. And then just, add on to that the day-to-day operational stress of a school. It's not just a leadership challenge, right? It's a leadership load. You just simply feel on your shoulders, and you know some leaders are able to carry it really well, and some of them really, really struggle. But what leaders, like what are leaders supposed to do? Well, they respond typically in the only way that they know how, right? So that might mean more meetings, more expectations, more accountability. Um, more authoritative, 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 top-down, positional, and policy-driven leadership. But clarity without belief does not produce action. So let me give you a couple ways to think about this. One of the most powerful ideas that I've learned from my last 10 years of reading, reflection, mentoring, um, live mentors, and the dead masters, right? Many of them over my shoulder here. These are some of my favorite books here about mindset right here. That belief systems are the most powerful driver in a school. Okay. Belief systems are the most powerful driver of behavior in a school. Behavior by students, behavior by adults, behavior by parents, behavior by the community. So you cannot hold people accountable to a standard, an expectation, or a rule that they do not personally believe in. So if a teacher does not believe that all their students can learn, then that's how they're going to act towards certain ones, right? If a teacher doesn't believe that behavior expectations matter, then that's how it's going to be communicated, right? They don't think that there's going to be, discipline on the back end of an issue. Like they're probably not going to report it. And if they don't believe that systems should be followed, systems for attendance or systems for behavior, systems for turning in reports, systems for grading, systems for exit ticket strategy, right? That's how they're going to act. And no amount of accountability will ever fix that long term. So if you're writing down, hopefully you are. If you're driving, don't. You can come back to this, but your values, right, drive your beliefs. Your beliefs drive your behavior. Your behavior drives actions, and your actions drive the results. And ultimately, that's your culture, okay? It's values, beliefs, behavior, actions, results in that order. What my core values are drive my beliefs. My beliefs drives my behavior drives my actions gets me my end results, and as a result of those actions, that's your culture, good or bad. Right? Culture is not random. It's built, right? Step by step, layer by layer. But it starts with your values. What do we say matters at our school, right? What do we say matters? And what do we do matters even more, right? What do we say and what do we do? Those values shape the beliefs. So, what do people actually believe is true? Do they believe that what I say matters? Or do they believe what I do matters, right? So, if your actions don't match your words, then you're fighting against the values that you say you want. If a person coming into your organization has different values and different beliefs, that's what they're going to hold on to until they're shown otherwise. Because beliefs drive behavior. Beliefs drive behavior. If I don't believe something's going to work, I'm not going to put a ton of effort into it. I'm going to do the bare minimum, right? But beliefs truly are how people act when no one is watching, right? Beliefs, that's your like integrity system. Behavior turns into actions, right? This is what gets done consistently. Are we only being compliant when we're driven to be compliant? Like I think about taking attendance, getting report card grades in on time. I mean, think about how much you fight through some of these things that are like you believe as a leader are so basic, right? Are so consistent. It's already on the calendar. Like, why do we have to fight every 9 weeks to get this done? Your actions produce your results, and all that together is your culture. Your culture is this invisible force of accountability. And if you don't like your results, don't start with the results. Go all the way back to the beliefs. So let me show you what this looks like in real schools. Okay. Let me show you what this looks like. All right. I've seen, well, let me just start here. There's culture by design and there's culture by default. So let's talk about what culture by default first looks like. It's not usually intentional, but it's very, very predictable. I'm telling you, one time I was the head of a school and they had a teacher that just didn't come to work. They had missed a ton of days. And I was like working through all the legal part of it, making sure that I did it right. And eventually like the teacher like said to me, I didn't realize that when I took this job, I had to come to work every day. It's not a teacher problem. That's a culture problem, right? I was the interim executive director, and that's what I was walking into. Or other schools, I've been in this situation too, where schools avoid discipline to protect enrollment. They'll say, well, that parent has a lot of pull, and if we suspend their kid, they're going to say bad things, and we're already kind of like, what? Just think about how many students you're losing because you're not disciplining that kid, right? But when that's your culture, the students become even more unruly. The parents are dictating consequences at your school. See, when you prioritize comfort over standards, your culture is going to decline. Or another school member I was consulting at, staff were late to everything, meetings, especially sometimes just the start of the day, or maybe they went out for lunch and like returned on their time. Kids are just waiting around. But I mean, meetings was the big one. Phones are out. People are disengaged, whether you're at a staff meeting or just even a leadership team meeting. I'll never forget, like the we would be there as a consulting team. A couple members of the team would be there for the weekly tactical meeting. No leader. Someone would go out to find a leader. The leader would eventually come in 6, 7 minutes late. Then we'd have these other people out there going, if I was, I'll never forget when my partner Jeff at the time, he said, there's nothing in this organization, no one that values time. Such a great quote. It's in our book. That's not a people problem. That's a leadership standard problem, right? Your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear the words you're saying. Or how about this one? Same school, actually. We watched a couple book their spring break vacation or their summer vacation. It must have been during state required testing training. We were we were in the back watching all the staff. They got their computers up while the testing coordinators out there, and she's working hard to try to show everybody like because this was going to be their first real big state assessment. They weren't trying to do it privately. They're just right there out in the open, booking their vacations. It's a big signal that this doesn't matter. This does not matter. See, culture by default is built through what you tolerate, right? Culture by default is built through what you tolerate. So what's culture by design look like, right? Culture by design starts with those core values. And those principles, like these are the keys that we believe that are going to strengthen culture. Maybe it's the principal greeting students every single morning. I still remember the picture of Eric Sanchez. He was in the newspaper. Eric's at Henderson Collegiate, and the kids were coming off the bus. This is maybe early in Henderson School years. Every single student, they would be lined up. He'd shake their hand. He'd look them in the eye. He'd see how they're doing. Every single student, every single day. Or when I was I remember being at, there's a few charter schools that do this, but it used to be called PAVE. It's in Southeast Raleigh. And every Friday, they had a pep rally celebrating the core values. The four core values were persistence, academics, vibrancy, and excellence, PAVE, P-A-V-E. So each Friday was a representation of that. And so um, I just remember these students, these kindergarten students, and they had this brick. They would walk into their spot with this brick. There was a giant pep rally. The whole gym was filled with kids, and every kid, right? There was one student from every class that was nominated for that core value, and he got to walk in his little kindergartens. Some of the bricks might have been heavier than some of them, but it was so impressive, right? And that brick, it stayed on their desk all week because it was the core values were the foundation of who we were. I'm sure you got a pep rally like that, right? We should do standing ovations at our school. Such a great, right, ritual. Because remember, culture is based upon rituals, ceremonies, celebrations. So what are you celebrating at your school? Or I love when we go and tour, best practices schools across the state. And we've got our student ambassadors leading it, right? It's not led by an adult, it's not led by a teacher, it's not led by the principal. You got students driving you through. I think Community School of Davidson is probably one of the best that I've seen, do this where the students are part of the hiring process. as, as well because they know and understand what does it mean to be part of this culture. Or during my dissertation process, I believe I was at Franklin Academy, but it could have also been at Community School of Davidson off the top of my head. And I just, no, it was definitely Franklin Academy. And I remember all these students lining up, right? And this, I think it was first grade, second grade, and this boy kept getting kind of nudged from, behind, and he just turned around and said, "Hey, that's not what we do here. We give space." And I was looking at him like my jaw dropped, right? In some schools, a kid would have come around, maybe punched him in the face, but he was letting him know, like, you've got your space, I got my space, right? For a 6 or 7 year old to be able to handle emotional composure like that. So rare. It's so rare. We don't do that here. We don't do that here. There's hundreds of examples you could probably pull down, right? But that's when you know your culture is working. Your culture that you designed is working. And the difference isn't talent, it's leadership. It's leadership. I just finished reading Dr. Anthony Mohammed's book. It's right here in front of me. Transforming Culture. It's a great book. I can't believe I haven't read it. It's over 10 years old now, but it's so key. But he talks about there's four types of employees in every school. There's the believers, there's the fundamentalist, the tweeners, and the survivors. But I want to talk about two in particular. The fundamentalists, right? These are those individuals that they're just really, resistant. They're very, very fixed in their day to day. They're usually, veterans that have been there a long time or been in a role. And then you got the tweeners, right? They're the kind of like the larger group of everybody. They're just kind of watching. They're very, very um, influenceable, right? You know, they're followers basically, right? And your believers are your are your drivers of the initiatives, right? They're the folks that are really just really carrying on anything that the leader talks about. And the survivors are the folks who are just really just hanging on, right? They're just hanging on. They're just kind of going through the motions and don't really have a stake because they're really really struggling or they're burnout, just holding on. But he talked about that you don't change culture by fighting resistance. You change culture by moving the middle, right? By moving those tweeners, right? How do you utilize your believers, right? To do their incredible work and to cascade that energy and that effort, right? And be able to influence the tweeners into moving in the right direction, right? If you always think about there's always 25 people or 25% of people probably with you, 25% are against you, and then the rest is the middle. And your job is to keep that middle moving forward, right? But you're not going to change the culture by working to change the belief of the fundamentalists. To do that, it's going to take a lot of peer influence. So who on your in your organization are your believers? Who are your influencers in a positive way? And the influence that you're trying to create to the school. How much time are you spending with them? How much time are you spending that right? They are able to do their work and to work in meetings and it's not to it's not to beg, folks. It's to lead folks, right? It's to lead through being a person of influence. It's to lead through building relationships and to really be able to explain the bigger picture and the why with clarity and confidence. Like this is the way we're moving. This is the way we're moving. But belief is not enough. Culture has to be reinforced through systems, through systems. And so, the foundational system, right? We've got an 11 point, cultural system assessment that I'm going to share with you guys. You guys are going to have access to. But if you've read my book, cultures, chapter 5, indicator 5, it's a key part. It's right there in the middle. It's the foundation. It's the spine of everything else, right? Because it doesn't matter how great your plans or your strategies are. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you got to have the culture you want in play. So the foundation is that your culture is defined, right? There's a 7 step, process. You got to see it, define it. You've got to model it. You got to train on it. You got to practice it. You got to measure it. You got to celebrate it. Okay. But it's culture defined, a culture that we want to see in play. Behaviors need to be clear, right? This is the how do we behave, right? Culture values, like how do our values describe and define how we will behave collaboratively, right? How will we treat each other? How will we treat our customers, which are the families? How will we treat, students? Leaders are, developed. If you want to build a culture by design, part of that design has to be developing the capacity of not just the top of the organization, but I just talked about the believers in the middle of that organization. And you got to work to make sure the beliefs are aligned. And there's nothing wrong with another way that someone wants to do something, right? Because what I've learned is that most individuals will strive to be competent. That means that they're going to take what they've known and done in the past and they'd rather do that because they don't want to look incompetent. So you got to make sure, like, are we hiring people who believe what we, believe? And I remember my, first years as a charter school director, we were um, a direct instruction focused school, a very, very, behaviorist model school. And basically, all of your lessons were written for you. The curriculum was prepared. We had, curriculum coaches. And I just remember like, interviewing some veteran teachers and we would be concerned because they would like, are they going to buy in? Are they going to believe in what we're doing here? And I remember this one particular teacher, Nicole, she was all about, you're going to write my lessons? Yeah. You're going to have a coach for me? Yeah. Like you're going to like, we analyzed the data. Like we had individuals who did all of this work. And about 60 to 75 days into her employment with us, I could just tell there was a shift. She's like, well, yeah, I really like being creative. I said, I completely respect that. But if you remember during the interview process, this is what we talked about. This is what the school believes. We believe this, it was Saxon math at the time. It works if you work it exactly the way it says to work it. And we did compromise. We showed her where she could be, a creative in the model. But it really hit me, right? That the things she talked about during her interview possibly weren't what she really, really believed. And she ended up being a very, very, successful teacher for us, right? It took some time and we worked really well, together because she did see the value of following the process in play. But it really made me rethink how I'm hiring people, right? A real behavior driven hiring process, which if you're one of the members of a program, you have access to. If you're not a member of our program, reach out. But we've got an 18-step behavior-based interview process that works. I'm telling you, it works if you work it every step. Um, so the foundation is culture defined, behavior is clear, leaders are developed, and beliefs are aligned. And then the accountability is that the culture is measured, right? Accountability is that I can count on you, okay? It's not an evil word, it's not a negative word. I don't want us to think about accountability in that. It's just that the culture is measured, right? We're what we believe the key indicators of success for our culture are being measured and talked about. Behavior is reinforced, right? Reward the behavior you desire to see, and you'll get more of it. Students are supported. Students are supported. And then alignment. The parents are aligned, the environment's aligned, and instructions engaging. Like that's the culture design. So those are the so we've got the 11 system. I'll drop the link for the folks that are in here live here in a second. You can download it, and then I'll put a link in the show notes so you can grab it, and then take that cultural assessment, sit down with your team, and talk about it. Right? It gives you a really easy process to how to get started. So high performing schools don't leave culture to chance. They build systems that reinforce it every single day. And in some organizations, depending upon where you are, it needs to be reinforced every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, right? Every hour, every day. Like there are ways you got to do it. Ways you can do it because if you really want to change those beliefs, like you got to go all the way back, right? So we talked about this, like if you even follow anything from like a behaviorist model, it takes something like 16 times 16 times of like practice to like get it right. That's why you need to hear things so many times. You need to practice things so many times. It takes that type of like effort to really change beliefs and to change behavior. Okay. And that's a big part of this. You are really helping people unlearn and relearn the behavior that you want to see. Unlearn and relearn. That's a critical time. It takes time to do this. Okay, so be gracious on yourself, step by step, right? And follow the process. So let's close up, or let's make this practical, right? So here's some questions that you probably want to write down. Where am I tolerating behavior that I shouldn't be? Like what part of your organization are you tolerating that you shouldn't? Is it absenteeism, tardyism, on, not being prepared, behavior in hallways, gossip, right? What are the things that are really impacting your culture? And what belief is driving that behavior, right? So where am I tolerating what I shouldn't? And what belief is driving that behavior? Now you can assume what that, belief is, but you can use our VRUOL process to really understand what that, belief is, right? V is vision. This is what we expect to see. R is reality. This is what we are seeing. U is help me understand. Okay. And then what standards maybe in your organization might be unclear. If you've got kind of like repeat offenders of certain aspects of your organization, it could just be a lack of clarity, right? You may think that you've communicated it, but it doesn't mean that it's stuck. Okay. So we create an 11 point, culture system. Takes less than 5 minutes. I'm gonna pull it up now so the folks that are in here can take a look at it. Folks that got a chance to come in here live. And while I'm doing this, I want you to be thinking on those questions, right? Think on those three. What am I tolerating that way, that I shouldn't? What's the beliefs? So if you're with us live, you can check that chat box. There you go. So it takes less than 10 minutes probably. If you do it on yourself, on your own, it's probably 5, minutes. But, be a great team exercise. Download this 11 point, cultural assessment. And again, if you want a copy, if you're not part of our any of our leadership communities, you can email me at tom@lbleaders.com, or you find a link in the show notes. But if you email me, just in the subject line, just write culture, and I'll know what you're talking about. So, but these are, some of the things I talked about are what we see each week in our inner circle. And our inner circle is a community of leaders. We've got multiple communities, depending upon what leadership level you're on or your role in an organization. But these are each week, leaders bring challenging topics to the group because, two minds are uh, way way better than one. But when you bring, 7 to 10 minds really masterminding through a challenge, it really helps the leader see different perspectives and gives them, like additional ideas. It also may affirm, some of the challenges. But I mean, each week I was just kind of going through the notes over the last, month or so, but board challenges, enrollment pressures, exceptional children's issues, staff culture struggle, leadership overload. And this isn't occasionally, like these are constant topics. Like I see them week by week by week. And what leaders realize is that they don't need more information, right? They need perspective, better strategies, support, and systems, right? Systems are what's going to help close that gap. So as you think about this week, don't just think about what needs to get done. Really think about what needs to change. What needs to change? Right? What belief is driving that behavior? What are you tolerating that you shouldn't? And where do you need to lead more intentionally, right? And so, again, you could download that system or that culture assessment, identify what systems maybe you don't have in play, and that's maybe one place you can get started because you're not going to lead a high performing school by reacting. You're you're going to build it by deciding on what will become and leading it there consistently, right? So when I say what it will become, that's your vision. That's the end result. And each week, making minor tweaks and shifts to your systems to get that school, get that team, get that teacher, right? Whatever it is that you're envisioning, a better result where you want it to be, right? So keep building, keep leading, keep making a difference. So, if you're here live and you got a question, feel free to open up here to answer any Q&A. And as I look through, culture assessment, it's a real simple agree and disagree. We talk about a cultural foundation, cultural alignment. And so I think this would be a really great, easy tool. We've used it with our schools that are in our accelerator program right now. So we've got our next live session with them this upcoming Friday. So I can't wait, to see who's actually put it in play and what their aha moments are from it. All right. Well, I'm going to end with this. If there's no questions coming forward, so I think your action steps right now, if we're looking at right now, 90 days from now, and 1 year from now, is what can I do right now? So the first thing you could do right now, download the assessment and sit and take it yourself, do it with your team. Okay. Second thing you could do right now, which I highly recommend, is you take those three questions. Where am I tolerating what I shouldn't? What belief is driving that behavior? And what standards are unclear? Okay, what's the root cause? And that's where I'm setting like my 90-day from now. So 90-day from now is like the end of the school year. So how do I want to end, the school year? Right? How do I want to really make sure that we've got these key foundational and alignment pieces in play, right? And because what you want to do is you want to future pace for everybody in the next year, right? That's your whole key here is to end really strong to this 90-day accelerated plan. So 1 year from now, where do I want to be, right? 1 year from now, like it could be hey, I want to have less absenteeism. I want to have more, engagement and participation. I want to have more, vision carriers and vision casters in the school. Whatever your 1 year from now vision is, your culture is going to help you create that. It's not help you. It's going to decide whether actually you have it or not. Because remember what I said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, okay? And eats vision for lunch. So it's your job to really work on that cultural piece to make sure that you can execute at the highest level. So thanks for tuning in this week. See you guys next Monday.